The world of daytime television usually gets brushed off as a guilty pleasure. Like, yeah, just some escapism to kill time between morning talk shows and those heavy primetime dramas at night. But back in the late 1970s and early 1980s, one man flipped that whole game upside down. His name was Anthony Geary, and with those piercing blue eyes, that rugged charisma, and seriously layered acting, he turned General Hospital into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. But behind that unforgettable face, and the character America just couldn't stop watching, was a man carrying contradictions, disappointments, and this deep, haunting loneliness that fame never really fixed. At 78 years old, Anthony Geary's story isn't some Hollywood celebration anymore. Nah, it's heartbreak. Born May 29, 1947, in Colville, Utah, Geary grew up in a pretty normal household, far from all that Hollywood glam. His dad ran a construction company. His mom was all about raising the family. Stardom? Yeah, that wasn't really in the cards, or so it seemed. But even as a kid, he had this restless vibe, like he was meant for something bigger. That itch led him to the University of Utah, where he studied theater and quickly stood out. Tall, magnetic, and with this dramatic presence, man could make even basic lines hit like thunder. Hollywood, though, not exactly welcoming. For years, Geary was grinding, picking up small roles in shows like All in the Family and Barnaby Jones. Blink and you miss it roles. Background characters. Gone in an episode or two. But even then, casting directors noticed something different. This intensity, this subtle darkness not many actors could pull off on camera. And yeah, that exact vibe would eventually shoot him straight into America's living rooms. In 1978, General Hospital was struggling bad. Ratings were tanking, and ABC execs were basically ready to pull the plug. So producers took a risky shot. They introduced a new anti-hero, a street-smart dude named Luke Spencer. Not your typical polished doctor or nurse from Port Charles. Nah, Luke was rough, morally messy, unpredictable. And somehow, Anthony Geary landed the role. What he didn't know? That one decision was about to change his entire life, and kinda trap him too. Luke Spencer was different. Like, really different. Charming but dangerous. Vulnerable but manipulative. Dude carried both menace and softness at the same time, and Geary leaned all the way into it. Audiences were hooked instantly. By 1981, the Luke and Laura wedding storyline blew up. Over 30 million viewers tuned in. That's insane. Even Elizabeth Taylor showed up in a cameo, turning it into a full-on national event. Anthony Geary, he wasn't just an actor anymore. He was a phenomenon. But here's the thing. Fame can seriously mess with your identity. Almost overnight, Geary became Luke Spencer in people's eyes. Random folks yelling Luke at him on the street. Tabloids all over him. Fans flooding him with letters every single week. From the outside, yeah, it looked like he made it. Dream life. But for him, it was turning into a nightmare real quick. He had studied Shakespeare and Chekhov. He wanted Broadway, deep roles, weird characters, stuff that actually challenged him. Instead, he was locked into a soap opera role. A complex one, sure, but still stuck in that repetitive daytime loop. That contradiction? It weighed heavy. He had awards, money, recognition, but inside, he felt stuck. Pigeonholed. Invisible as a real artist. Even when he was stacking daytime Emmys, eventually hitting a record with 8 wins, it didn't hit the way people think. Luke Spencer was both the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened to me, he admitted once. And yeah, that line says everything. Behind the legend, the man was slowly falling apart. By the late 1980s into the 1990s, Geary tried to break free. He left General Hospital, hoping to land film roles or primetime gigs. But Hollywood had already boxed him in. To them, he wasn't Anthony Geary, he was Luke Spencer. No one wanted to take that risk. So yeah, he came back. Not a victory, more like a bitter surrender. He kept playing Luke on and off for decades. Built a legacy, no doubt. But the price? His artistic freedom. And while fans were celebrating him, his personal life told a completely different story. He never married, never had kids, kept his private life locked down. In interviews, he came off guarded, kinda distant, with this quiet sadness underneath. Behind all those awards and red carpet smiles, a man living alone. Friends said he was brilliant, funny, generous, but also super private, sometimes distant. He'd rather chill at home with books and music than deal with Hollywood parties. As time went on, he felt more and more disconnected from the industry. Finally, in 2015, after decades of carrying Luke Spencer, he retired. But instead of soaking in fame or fan love, he dipped, moved to Amsterdam, where he's been living ever since. Far from cameras, far from the pressure, just chasing some peace he never found in America. And still, the tragedy sticks. At 78, Anthony Geary is remembered for one role. Despite wanting more his whole life, his story isn't just about winning TV. It's about being trapped by your own success. A man who gave everything on screen, but didn't get much back off it. That's the real heartbreak. Even in victory, he kinda lost. By the early 1980s, General Hospital wasn't just another soap. It was the center of pop culture. And right at the core, Luke and Laura, their love story, massive, like obsession level for millions. It was Geary's biggest win, and yeah, also his lifelong burden. The storyline didn't even start clean. Luke Spencer came in as morally gray, even straight-up antagonist energy. His relationship with Laura Weber, played by Jeannie Francis, began under circumstances that later got called out as controversial and problematic. But as things developed, audiences saw Luke change, soften, show vulnerability. What started messy turned into one of TV's most iconic romances. November 17th, 1981, the wedding episode. Boom. History. Over 30 million viewers. Schools closing early. Offices letting people watch. Headlines everywhere calling it the wedding of the century. And again, Elizabeth Taylor showing up made it even crazier. For Geary, that was the peak. He became a household name overnight. Magazine covers, talk shows, awards, everyone wanted him. Luke Spencer wasn't just a character anymore. He was an archetype, the flawed hero everyone loved. But behind all that hype, Geary wasn't at peace. Privately, he struggled with Luke's story. He admitted later that the origin of Luke and Laura's relationship bothered him. While fans saw romance, he saw darker layers and questioned the morality of it all. That conflict stayed with him. On screen, he was America's hero. Off screen, he carried the weight of the story's shadows. That tension, yeah, nobody watching could see it, but it messed with him big time. Meanwhile, his whole professional identity got wrapped up in Luke Spencer. Casting directors straight up refused to see him as anyone else. Different roles? Barely any. And when they did show up, they were just weak knockoffs of Luke, rugged anti-heroes with zero depth. Geary wasn't having it. He turned them down, holding out for something real. But Hollywood? Man, it forgets fast. Dude ended up stuck inside the very success he hustled so hard to build. And it got worse with the non-stop grind of soap opera life. Unlike films or primetime shows, daytime dramas pump out 5 episodes a week, non-stop, year after year. The workload? Brutal. Lines had to be memorized overnight. Scenes got shot in one take, no matter how complicated. No time to sit back, no time to grow, just that endless grind. For a guy like Geary, who once dreamed of Shakespeare-level greatness, it was soul-crushing. Still, despite all that frustration, Geary showed up and delivered. Every single time. He gave Luke a depth most soap characters never even touched. His eyes could flip from playful to straight-up despair in a second. His voice, it could crack with raw emotion, then snap back hard with determination. People didn't just watch Luke, they felt him. That was Geary's gift, making a flawed character feel real, and it kept fans hooked on General Hospital for decades. But fame? It cuts both ways. Every fan letter, every screaming crowd outside the studio, it chipped away at him. Geary once said being called Luke everywhere felt like living in a cage. The world loved Luke Spencer. But Anthony Geary? Yeah, not so much. Over time, the line between them got blurry, like seriously blurry, until even he struggled to tell where Luke ended and he began. That mix-up came with a heavy price. While other actors built lives full of family, relationships, and variety, Geary's personal life stayed quiet, almost too quiet. He never married, never had kids. His closest companions? Books, music, and being alone. In a city obsessed with parties, premieres, and paparazzi, Geary was like a ghost, slipping out of the spotlight whenever he could. On set, people respected his brilliance, no doubt. But they also noticed how distant he was. Jeannie Francis, who shared so many iconic scenes with him, said their connection was professional, but complicated. The chemistry on screen? Unreal. Off-screen? Geary kept his guard up. That emotional wall protected him, yeah, but it also locked him in. By the 1990s, things started cracking. Geary tried to leave General Hospital, chasing a fresh start. He wanted film roles, primetime TV, anything to shake off Luke Spencer once and for all. But Hollywood wasn't playing nice. Casting agents, execs, even fans, they couldn't separate him from Luke. He got typecast in the worst way, respected but boxed in. Eventually, with nowhere else to go, he came back to General Hospital. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. It was like admitting defeat, low-key painful. And yeah, it only made that trap feeling worse. Same cycle over and over, praise, awards, fans going crazy, then boom, disappointment, regret, and that gut punch realization he wasn't breaking free. Every daytime Emmy he picked up, 8 in total, proved his talent, but also reminded him of the cage he couldn't unlock. And through all that, Anthony Geary got older, more tired, more worn down. That fiery actor who once dreamed big, like way beyond Port Charles, was now stuck to one identity. His creative spirit, bruised by the very role that made him famous. To the world, he was Luke forever. To himself, he felt like a man drowning in his own shadow. As years turned into decades, his story hit harder. He achieved what most people can't even imagine. But he lost himself along the way. It wasn't just about winning or losing anymore. It was about the brutal price of fame. The messed up irony of being remembered for the one thing that slowly broke you inside. For most actors, winning even one Emmy is the dream. For Anthony Geary, it became routine. Over his career, he grabbed 8 daytime Emmys for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, setting a record that locked his name into TV history. Every time he stepped on stage, trophy in hand, the applause was wild. Cameras zoomed in, catching a man who looked grateful, proud, humbled, but inside, yeah, empty. To everyone else, he was the king of daytime TV, praised by colleagues, respected by critics, loved by fans. But here's the twist. The more people celebrated Luke Spencer, the more invisible Anthony Geary felt. Every Emmy reminded him of the life he really wanted, Broadway, Shakespeare, roles with real weight. Instead, he kept getting rewarded for being Luke, the one thing he was desperate to escape. And that soap opera grind didn't help. Scripts flew in at insane speed. 5 episodes a week meant constant memorizing, endless takes, no breathing room. Primetime actors got months to prep. Geary, man had to absorb entire storylines overnight. He still brought brilliance, no doubt, but it drained him. Slowly, it hit him physically, mentally, emotionally. People noticed. Crew members said he was always professional, always ready, always delivering. But you could see the weight on him. Sometimes his eyes gave it away, that deep exhaustion no makeup could hide. Offset, he pulled back even more. No flashy parties, no red carpet love stories. Unlike others, he never chased the spotlight outside work. He just stayed quiet, like a guy who gave everything but didn't get much back. People kept guessing about his personal life. Why no marriage? No kids? No partner? In an industry where everything gets exposed, Geary stayed silent. Locked it all down. But that silence just made him seem more alone, isolated in a world that once worshipped him. There were also whispers about his health. Years of that intense schedule, plus getting older, left him dealing with serious back pain and constant physical strain. Decades on set wore him down. Fans still saw Luke Spencer as strong and unstoppable. But behind the scenes, Geary was just trying to keep going, day by day. By the 2000s, he became this strange contradiction. A full-on legend, standing ovations, millions of loyal fans. But also a man worn out by his own success. His face, once full of ambition, now showed pure exhaustion from carrying Luke Spencer for so long. Even when he stepped away from General Hospital for a bit, it didn't matter. Luke followed him everywhere. No escape. That shadow was huge. Still, Geary wasn't playing the victim. He poured all that frustration into his acting. And honestly, some of his best work came from that period. He leaned deep into Luke's complexity, the gray areas, the internal battles, the mix of darkness and light. Fans said he took soap acting to another level. His ability to show emotion with just a look or a pause. Untouchable. He brought that Shakespearean vibe to daytime TV, even while feeling stuck in it. But time kept moving, and Geary started thinking about life after Hollywood. He had spent decades being Luke Spencer. So what was left of Anthony Geary? Retirement wasn't really a choice anymore. It was something he needed. He couldn't keep up with the grind, the pressure, that suffocating identity forced on him. In 2015, Geary made the decision fans had been dreading for years. He announced his retirement from General Hospital. The farewell hit hard. Yeah, real emotional stuff for the audience and for Geary himself. In interviews, he talked with this mix of relief and sadness, kinda heavy vibes. He was grateful for the role, grateful for the fans, but he just couldn't keep lying to himself anymore. The truth was right there. Time to close the curtain, no cap. But then his next move? Man, it shocked everybody. Instead of chilling in Los Angeles, soaking in the legacy he built, Geary hopped on a plane to Amsterdam. This wasn't some cute vacation. Nah, this was straight up an escape. Far from Hollywood, far from all those non-stop reminders of Luke Spencer, Geary went looking for peace in the canals and quiet streets of the Netherlands. Out there, surrounded by art, history, and nobody knowing his face, he finally felt a kind of freedom that had dodged him his whole life. Amsterdam gave him something Los Angeles never could. Obscurity. No fans running after him. No tabloids making up stories. No producers asking for more. For the first time in decades, he wasn't Luke Spencer. He was just Anthony. Just a regular guy. He could walk by the canals, check out bookstores, sit in a cafe with his coffee, and just vibe alone. In that silence, he slowly started picking up pieces of the life he lost. And still, even in Amsterdam, the tragedy didn't fully dip. At 78 years old, Anthony Geary lives in this wild paradox. A man who gave everything to a role that made him immortal on TV, but yeah, it cost him his own personal happiness. He's celebrated, remembered, admired, but also alone. Far from the Hollywood that once swallowed him whole. It's kinda bittersweet, honestly. A dude who chased the fame dream, only to realize it was low-key empty. Anthony Geary's story isn't just about rising and falling. It's about the dangerous pull of fame itself. The way it lifts you up, the way it tears you down, and how it leaves behind this silence that hits different. Leaving Hollywood wasn't just retirement. Nah, it was survival mode. When Anthony Geary walked away from General Hospital in 2015, he was closing the final chapter after almost 4 decades of playing Luke Spencer. But instead of living that comfy celeb life, doing appearances, memoir deals, or fan conventions, Geary chose exile. Straight up disappeared. Destination? Amsterdam. A city of canals, bikes, and people minding their own business. To some folks, that move felt weird. Like, why would a guy with fame, money, and loyal fans just vanish like that? But the answer was simple. Freedom. In Los Angeles, he could never escape Luke Spencer. In Amsterdam, he could finally go ghost. There, he wasn't some soap opera legend. He was just another dude riding a bike down narrow cobblestone streets, another face in a cafe, another soul walking through the galleries of the Rijksmuseum. Amsterdam gave him what Hollywood never did, space to breathe. He bought a house along one of those quiet canals, filled it with books, art, and music. His days? Walking, cycling, reading, just living slow. Friends who visited said he finally looked at peace. One even said, he can live like a normal person here. Nobody calls him Luke. Nobody asks for autographs. He is Anthony. But let's be real, that quiet life had shadows too. For decades, his life ran on a crazy schedule, lines to memorize, scenes to shoot, fans to please. Now, silence. No applause. No cameras. For someone who gave everything to performing, that stillness felt freeing, but also kinda haunting. Geary himself admitted it wasn't easy. Retirement ain't just quitting work, it's losing your identity. Like, who even are you without the role? That same paradox came back, stronger than ever. He spent years trying to escape the character, and now that he finally did, he didn't even know what was left of him. Loneliness stuck around. At 78, Geary's unmarried. No kids. No partner. He says he's cool with being alone, but people close to him low-key hint at something deeper, a quiet sadness that's always been there. No family photos, no grandkids, no one to lean on in old age. Just Anthony, by himself in Amsterdam, holding memories of a life that was both amazing and kinda empty. And yeah, his body felt it too. Years of grinding through production schedules left him with chronic back issues and other health struggles. Amsterdam's slower life helped a bit, but aging? That's undefeated. Fans who catch rare interviews notice it right away, how fragile he looks now, how different from that tough Luke Spencer they remember. Time doesn't play fair. Still, there's something poetic about his exile. He spends his days around art, culture, history, the same things that got him into acting in the first place. Visiting galleries, going to concerts, reading like crazy. Without performing, he went back to being a student of the arts. Like that young guy from Utah who once dreamed of Shakespeare stages. For all the heartbreak, there's still beauty in how he lives now. But the real question? Is he actually at peace? Or is Amsterdam just another stage, a quieter one, where he plays the role of a man who's fine being alone while carrying scars that never really healed? People who know him say the truth sits somewhere in the middle. He escaped the heavy weight of Luke Spencer, but he didn't escape Anthony Geary's loneliness. That's the real tragedy. Not just what fame took from him, but what it gave. Yeah, it gave him recognition, money, a legacy millions won't forget. But it also took his privacy, his creative freedom, and any real shot at a personal life full of love. It left him with a brilliant career and a quiet life. As time moves on, younger generations barely know his name. Soap operas, once a huge part of American TV, don't hit the same anymore. Luke and Laura? That's nostalgia now, something people see in documentaries or random YouTube clips, not something alive in culture. Geary knows this too. In interviews, he doesn't sound bitter about General Hospital, but there's this tired tone, like he's accepted that history will only remember him for one thing. So here he is, 78 years old, sitting in his Amsterdam home. Free, but still kinda trapped. At peace in obscurity, but also like a ghost of who he used to be. His story isn't about scandal or failure. It's something deeper, the slow loss of identity under the pressure of fame. The canals of Amsterdam might look calm and peaceful, but they can't erase the questions following him around. Did he give up too much for a role he never truly loved? Did fame take away his chance at a fuller life? And the biggest one, when his story finally ends, will people remember the man or just the character that took over his life? Actors always talk about legacy. For some, it's a mix of roles, iconic performances across years. For others, it's about becoming larger than life. For Anthony Geary, legacy is both a crown and a curse. At 78, he's known as one of the greatest soap opera actors ever, but almost only for one role. That's the cruel part. The same thing that made him unforgettable also erased who he really wanted to be. When people hear Anthony Geary, they think Luke Spencer. That sly smile, the blonde hair, the anti-hero vibe that had America hooked in the 1980s. They think about Luke and Laura's wedding, a moment that pulled in more viewers than some Super Bowls. They think of Emmys, magazine covers, decades of storylines that turned General Hospital into something legendary. For millions, Luke Spencer is unforgettable. But Anthony Geary? He feels like a side note behind his own creation. And honestly, this wasn't the life he imagined back when he was a young theater student in Utah. He dreamed about Shakespeare's Hamlet, Chekhov's Ivan, deep roles in films that would really test his craft. Instead, he became immortal as a character he both loved and hated. To the fans, Luke Spencer was everything. To Geary, Luke was a prison, a whole fancy cage lined with gold. But yeah, the truth's a bit more complicated than that. While Geary has often talked about how frustrating it was being typecast, he also knew damn well that without Luke, his career might have never hit those insane heights. Not many actors, even in Hollywood, can say they created a character that literally defined an era. Not many can say they became the face of a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Luke Spencer wasn't just some daytime TV dude. He was bigger than that. He was the flawed hero America was vibing with in the late 20th century. And Geary brought him to life with such crazy depth that even critics who used to brush off soap operas as nonsense had to admit the guy was brilliant. Still, legacy ain't just about what the world remembers. It's about what sticks in your heart after you've lived through it all. And for Geary, that inner legacy hits kinda heavy, tinged with sadness. He never really escaped Luke's shadow. Even out in Amsterdam, random people still recognize him, their faces lighting up like, yo, that's Luke Spencer. For a second, the past just rushes back in like a wave. But for Geary, those moments, they're bittersweet. just reminders of the identity that basically took over his whole life. His solitude makes it hit even harder. In Hollywood, legends are usually surrounded by family, protégés, or fans keeping their stories alive. Geary? Nah, he chose distance. No spouse talking about his private joys, no kids carrying on his memory, no memoir telling his side of things. Dude stayed quiet. That silence made him kind of a mystery, but it also left him exposed, defined only by what people saw on screen. The real tragedy of Anthony Geary isn't some scandal or downfall. It's invisibility. Yeah, he's everywhere in reruns, documentaries, and nostalgia posts. But the actual man? He's kinda disappeared, even from history itself. When people talk about him, they talk about Luke. When the industry gives him props, it's all about General Hospital. The full picture of who he is, his struggles, dreams, loneliness, that stuff stays hidden, locked away in his quiet Amsterdam place. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how Geary wants it. In interviews, he's hinted that he doesn't chase legacy. He talks about peace, about enjoying being anonymous, about just walking around like a regular guy. Maybe the real flex for someone that famous is dipping out into normal life. Maybe, in his eyes, his real legacy isn't Luke. It's the freedom he managed to carve out for himself in the end. Still, the silence? Yeah, it's kinda haunting. At 78, Geary's stepping into the twilight of his life. The industry that once hyped him up has mostly moved on. Soap operas themselves are fading out, replaced by streaming and those high-end dramas. The world that made Luke and Laura's wedding a massive event. It doesn't even exist anymore. For younger folks, Geary's just a name with no real weight. Only the people who lived through it remember how huge he really was. And honestly, that might be the most heartbreaking part. To give so much of yourself to art, to hit a level of success most people can't even dream of, and then watch it all slowly turn into distant nostalgia? That's rough. Geary handles it with a calm, stoic vibe, but you can still see the sadness in the lines on his face and how carefully he chooses his words in interviews, like he's deciding what the world deserves to hear and what he's keeping to himself. Anthony Geary's story is like a warning about how seductive fame can be. It shows that success can take more from you than failure ever could. It can take your time, your identity, your freedom, even your shot at a life outside the spotlight. Geary gave the world a character that's gonna outlive him. But the price? Yeah, it was heavy. A life of solitude, dreams left hanging, and being remembered for just one slice of his talent. But there's also some real dignity in his story. He didn't crash and burn in scandal or addiction. He didn't go out in chaos. He just walked away, quietly, on his own terms, into a life he actually chose. And in that sense, Anthony Geary is still strong as hell. A guy who survived the suffocating grip of fame and still found a way to breathe. As he looks out over the canals of Amsterdam, maybe he finds peace in the stillness, in being just another face in the crowd. Maybe he's accepted that his legacy will always belong more to Luke Spencer than to Anthony Geary. And maybe, in that quiet exile, he's finally okay with it. But for the rest of us, yeah, it still hurts a bit. Because when we think about Anthony Geary, we're not just thinking about an amazing performance. We're thinking about what it cost him. We're thinking about a man who gave everything to the world and ended up, in the end, with just himself. There's this moment every performer low-key fears, the final curtain call. The lights dim, the crowd stands up, applause goes crazy, and then eventually, it all fades into silence. For Anthony Geary, that silence has been going on for almost a decade. Since retiring in 2015, he's been living a low-key life in Amsterdam, miles away from studios, cameras, and the millions of fans who used to hang on his every word. But silence, even if it's peaceful, can mess with you. For someone who spent most of his adult life under bright lights, the quiet has been both a blessing and a curse. Back in the early days of his retirement, fans were straight up begging for a comeback. Social media was buzzing nonstop. People kept asking, would Luke Spencer return for a surprise storyline? Would Geary show up for a cameo during General Hospital anniversaries? Every year, the same questions popped up. But his answer? Always the same. Nope. That chapter was closed for good. For him, Luke wasn't something to revisit. It was something to leave behind. But yeah, Luke never really left him. Reruns of General Hospital still air. Clips of Luke and Laura's wedding keep popping up online. pulling in younger viewers who are just discovering them. Documentaries about TV history still feature his face, his voice, his work. Even while chilling in Amsterdam, Geary can't fully escape Luke Spencer. Fame doesn't just end, it sticks around, echoing long after the voice is gone. For fans, Geary is still that beloved icon, but it's mixed with nostalgia. They remember when Luke and Laura were everything, when their wedding pulled in crazy viewership, when Geary's face was everywhere, magazines, TV, all of it. To them, he's frozen in time. Forever young. Forever Luke. But reality hits different. At 78, Geary's older now. That golden hair turned silver. His body, slowed down by age and years of grind. For fans, seeing that change can be kinda shocking. For him, though, it's just life. A life he's living far away from all those eyes that once adored him. And here's the tough part, the real paradox. Millions still remember him, still love him, but he spends most of his days alone. His Amsterdam home isn't filled with kids running around or family dinners. It's filled with books, music, and straight-up silence. People who visited say he seems at peace with his routine, but you can tell there's solitude there. He reads, writes, walks around the city, rides his bike. It's calm. But yeah, there's also a quiet emptiness. Some close friends say he's made peace with it. They say he's not bitter, that he values privacy way more than fame. But even they admit, solitude cuts both ways. It protects you, sure, but it also isolates you. And as time goes on, that isolation hits heavier. In interviews, Geary kinda hints at it too. He talks about being content, but there's always this slight sadness underneath, like even he's not fully convinced. Meanwhile, his fans? Still going strong. Online forums, fan pages, they're all about him. Sharing old clips, celebrating his Emmy wins, posting birthday tributes. People even send letters to ABC hoping somehow they'll reach him. They talk about how Luke Spencer helped them through tough times. How Geary's performances actually meant something in their lives. To them, he's not just some actor. He's part of their story. Yet the man himself? He's living miles away from all that love, tucked up in Amsterdam, just watching life go by real quiet, like low-key, maybe never even clocking how deep he really hit people. That disconnect? Yeah, that's what makes Geary's story hit different, straight-up tragic. The guy did what most actors can't. Cultural immortality, no joke. And still, he's out here living like he got ghosted by the world. It's not scandal on his back, not disgrace either. It's that quiet, heavy feeling of being remembered for something he doesn't even want to carry anymore. Millions of fans, yeah, but barely any real ones around him. A legacy? Huge. Personal happiness? Kinda empty. The applause still plays on loop in reruns and fan edits, but inside his place, it's just silence, man. And as time moves on, mortality starts creeping in closer. At 78, Geary knows the truth. He's way nearer to the end than the start now. No kids to carry his name, no family sitting around sharing memories. When he's gone, yeah, Luke Spencer will live on, clips from General Hospital, fans remembering that wild 1980s era. But Anthony Geary, the real man behind it all, he might just fade out almost completely. And maybe, just maybe, that's how he wanted it. His final move. A man who gave everything to the world for decades, then quietly took himself back at the end. Maybe this silence ain't even sad. Maybe it's his way of saying fame ain't forever. It's all kind of fake. And real peace? That comes from being free, not being remembered. Still, for the fans, it hits hard. Thinking about Anthony Geary alone in Amsterdam, like a legend in exile. Yeah, that's the harsh truth about fame. It gives like crazy, but it also takes no warning. It gave him a legacy nobody can erase, but took away a life filled with love, family, and real companionship. Now he walks those calm Amsterdam streets, far from cameras, far from cheers, carrying both sides of that weight. And that silence after the applause? That's where he lives now. And in that silence, his tragedy shows itself, not cause he was forgotten, but cause he was only remembered as Luke Spencer. While Anthony Geary, the man, the dreamer, the artist, stayed hidden in the shadows. Every life got two stories, right? The one people see, and the one nobody ever really knows. For Anthony Geary, the world saw Luke Spencer, the anti-hero turned romantic icon, the flawed dude who bagged 8 daytime Emmys, the guy who carried General Hospital into TV history. But the real story? The hidden one? That's where it gets deep. Who was Anthony Geary behind all that? The man behind the mask, living in shadows, full of questions nobody ever answered. At 78, he's far from the spotlight, but somehow that just made people more curious. Fans digging through old interviews, looking for clues. Was he really cool with being alone? Or just hiding something deeper? Why he never got married? No memoir, no doc, no final tell-all? That silence. Yeah, it became part of his legend too. In a world where celebs overshare everything online, Geary staying quiet feels weird, but also kind of fascinating. Maybe that was always him. From day one, he kept his inner world locked, gave everything on screen, but nothing to tabloids. Hollywood tried to swallow him up, but he never fully let it. Private, mysterious, distant. So honestly, him moving to Amsterdam? That wasn't escape, it was just how his story was always going to end. A man balancing the world's obsession with his own need for space. Still, the tragedy doesn't go away. Fame never let him just be Anthony. To fans, he's always Luke. To the industry, he's daytime TV royalty. But to himself? Who even was he? That question just hangs there, no answer. Maybe even he don't fully know. Playing Luke Spencer for decades blurred everything, until the real him became hard to find. And that struggle? That's human as it gets. Anthony Geary's story ain't about scandals or chaos. It's about wanting freedom, identity, something real. An artist stuck in a role too big to shake off. A man who became immortal, but just wanted to disappear. His tragedy is quiet. No drama, no headlines. But that silence, it makes it hit even harder. Now, in the later chapter of his life, he carries all these contradictions. A legend, but kind of forgotten. Celebrated, but alone. Immortal on screen, invisible in real life. His Amsterdam house, filled with books and silence, feels like both a safe place and a cage. The canals reflect beauty, sure, but also the loneliness of a man who once had millions watching him and now walks solo. But maybe there's dignity in that too. He never chased fame like that. Never sold out for attention. Never stirred drama just to stay relevant. He left on his own terms, disappeared into a life only he could control. That might be his real legacy. Not letting Hollywood decide his ending. But for fans? Yeah, it still hurts. They remember his intensity, his performances, how he made everything feel real. Love, pain, redemption. Luke Spencer wasn't just a character. He was part of their lives. So to them, Anthony Geary ain't gone. He's still there, in memories, reruns, echoes of a time when TV could stop everything. And that's why his tragedy ain't just his. It's ours too. A culture that takes everything from its artists and gives so little back. A man who poured his soul into his work and ended up feeling empty. And when his time comes, the world will cry for Luke Spencer. But Anthony Geary? They might never really know him. As his story comes to a close, one question stays. Will anyone ever tell the real story behind Luke? Or will it stay locked away in that Amsterdam silence, known only to him? Right now, nobody knows. But one thing's clear. Anthony Geary's life, all the highs and heartbreaks, shows how thin that line is between fame and freedom, legacy and loss. At 78, he's proof that success can bless you and curse you at the same time. And behind every legend, there's just a human being, flawed, fragile, and wanting to be seen. And maybe that's the saddest part of it all. Anthony Geary, the man, was never fully seen.